episode of the NBA Outlet preview series. I'm your host, Diesing-Fay. With me, as always, Harris Wichard. What's up, Harris?
How's it going, Nick? Excited to continue our preview series here at OTG. Tonight, we're having a look at number 20, the Miami Heat.
Yeah, tonight we're looking at the Heat. Big drop-off from last season, where they finished. A lot of people were excited about that team. But then, they had the Chris Bosh injury. We'll talk about Bosh a little bit later in the show. But do you think 20 is a fair ranking for the Heat?
I think so. And, there's a little bit of uncertainty. Obviously, the Dwayne Wade departure is going to be our main focus. And where they go from here, that's a man who put in a tremendous amount of work for the organization. You look at guys like Wade, not maybe in the same class as Kobe, but when you thought Miami Heat, even when LeBron came, a lot of people thought Dwayne Wade. So I think it's fair for now. There's a lot of moving parts. Obviously, the uncertainty with Chris Bosh. But for me, with Dwayne Wade now out, it's a chance, I guess, for some of the younger guys to step up and some of the other pieces they have to see and form a true identity. But they're going to feel the loss of Dwayne Wade as a leader. And going forward, they won 48 games last year. They won a round in the playoffs. And famously that, the Charlotte Hornet series where Wade went off and then lost to the Raptors. So I think it's fair for now. There's uncertainty and some question marks, but I think right around 20, 21, 19, that's a fair number, I believe.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair number, maybe a touch higher, but this team relied a lot on Dwayne Wade at the end of last season and in the playoffs. So they're going to miss him, his production, and his leadership. And a lot of these guys in the roster right now, you don't know what you're getting. They're going to rely a lot on Hassan Whiteside. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting season for the Heat. They could do better than this 20 ranking, or, they could even maybe do possibly worse.
Yeah, and like you said, Wade did a lot on an intangible standpoint. He was helping mature some of these younger players that they have on their roster. They just signed Tyler Johnson. It's that multi-year deal, the guard from Fresno State. Goran Dragic's only been in the league for about 8 years, so he's still got some room to improve. And, guys like, Bosh has been in the league, and they got Haslam and Bosh still, Udrih, a backup guards. They have some experience, but filling the void of Dwayne Wade and moving on from that time period, that era, might take some time for the Miami Heat. So I think they'll have an opportunity to make the postseason. But if they weren't in the postseason, it would not shock me one bit.
Yeah, it's going to be honestly just weird watching the Heat without Dwayne Wade. I was really surprised about his departure. But let's talk about the Heat offseason. It's going to be a different roster from last season. They picked up a lot of different players. They've added some shooting, Luke Babbitt, Wayne Ellington, picked up some toughness with James Johnson, picked up Willie Reed. You mentioned Udrih. And then they had interesting signings in Dion Waiters and Derek Williams. Both guys have a lot of potential, but you don't really know what you're getting out of them. So a lot of potential and a lot of inconsistency.
Knicks fans know Derek Williams can be explosive, but on the defensive end, he really doesn't have a clue what's going on. Justice Winslow had a nice rookie season last year, and he'll probably improve. But with Winslow and Williams, they don't have much shooting there. So like you said, Wade was a perimeter threat at all times. He didn't shoot the three exceptionally well, but I look for Goran Dragic to have a big season, Nick. I think with Wade out now with the ball in his hands more, I think the 8-year pro out of Slovenia could really do some nice things for the Heat and be someone that they can rely on down the stretch.
Well, and we mentioned Wade leaving. Dragic is going to have the ball in his hands a lot more. They added these two shooters in Ellington and Babbitt, guys that spread the floor. Some of these young guys can play. They can get hot. If Bosh plays, it's been mentioned over the last few days that it looks like Bosh is going to be cleared to play. That'll be huge for the Heat and huge for Dragic. Great pick-and-roll partner. And then, it's easy to throw a lob to Hassan Whiteside of your Dragic. So a lot more ball, a lot more production for him.
Well, if we look at a lineup, and if Johnson could play the two, I like Tyler Johnson's game a lot. I'm not sure who they're going to start at the two, maybe Ellington. They have some options there with Wade departuring. But that Dragic will be at the one. Winslow will probably be at the three. And then if Bosh is going to be there with Whiteside. So they have a nice little group there that'll compete on almost every night in the East. And there's a lot of question marks with their health. You never really know what you could get. You mentioned that to me with this team. The stability of Dwayne Wade being there, and you're talking about a team that after LeBron left had to go through another adjustment period when he went to Cleveland. They won 37 games the first year he left. Second year they made the playoffs. So now it's another adjustment with Wade gone. Bosch being the only member still left of the big three in Miami. So I think between 6 and 8 seed is a generally realistic expectation for this franchise. But at the same time, they took a step back and sometimes a couple steps back to take a couple steps forward. With Whiteside and Dragic, though, because Bosch doesn't have a ton of years left, with Dragic and Whiteside and Winslow and with Johnson, maybe they could build something for the future. But they're in a weird spot because it's kind of a win-now team without win-now players.
Yeah, no, they're in an interesting spot. I think, they've had so much success over the last whatever amount of years, with Dwayne Wade, the big three, Shaq, all that. So I think they can afford, maybe take a year or two to retool a little bit. Like you said, they have some young players to build around. So a nice trade, a nice offseason, this team could be back in playoff contention. Me personally, I could see them as a bottom 8 or 7 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make the playoffs either.
Yeah,
but
just a couple of guys, like I said, have experience in the playoffs, but it's a Dragic-driven team, and he's going to be making most of the decisions. What most people forget is that he sat behind Steve Nash in Phoenix for a while before getting his career going. So had a great leader, kind of shown the way a little bit, and now the second-round pick in 2008 is starting to show his worth in the league, and I think he has a nice season.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Heat's departures. We mentioned Dwayne Wade. Obviously, that's a huge loss. But they did have some other substantial losses. They lost Luol Deng, Joe Johnson, 2 guys who started for them down the stretch. They also lost Gerald Green, Amari Stoudemire, Darrell Wright. What do these guys sticks out to you, Harris?
Deng was good for them. He's a good perimeter defender. He's long, he's lengthy, he's a veteran. I mean, Joe Johnson is at the end of his career. He's at the end of his run. I never really loved him as a player. Had some great years in Atlanta, but more of an offensive-minded guy. Deng plays both ends of the floor. Stoudemire, again, at the end of his career. Gerald Green is a guy off the bench that can give you nice minutes, not much more than that. More of a high flyer. But Luol Deng plays both ends, and I think they're going to miss him a little bit. But Justice Winslow could become a Deng-like threat and player, going to his second year now at Duke. So I think they'll miss Deng a little bit, but Winslow could be Deng 2.0 and step into his role.
Yeah. Like you said, Deng, he had a big part on this team. He played the 4 down the stretch. They played that small ball. He gave him that versatility. You mentioned he played defense as well. That's a thing that this team will need. I think he'd offered him an interesting, long, lanky, athletic player. He's getting up there in age, but he still was able to produce a bit for that team last year. And, I'm a bigger fan of Joe Johnson than you. He had a nice stretch with the Heat at the end of last season. And I think that they'll miss both these guys, not just their veteran presence, but probably some of their production, because it was a rough for the Heat at points last year, and they definitely needed some veterans on offense.
Well, you can't keep too many Johnsons on your roster. You have Tyler, Jane, no, I'm just kidding. But the thing that Joe Johnson to me has always come off as a guy that he'll go off in the fourth quarter. He'll kind of drift a little bit at times and go away. He just, at this point of his career, I know he had some good years like the Nets and the Hawks and stuff, but I just think that he's not going to be missed much because, they could find that offense in other areas. I mean, his outside shot was a little inconsistent too. He's not a 40% three-point shooter either. I might be mistaken when I say that, but for the most part, he wasn't like a knockdown three-point shooter. He was a good shooter, solid offensive player, but there was always something missing for me with Joe to take him to another level. That's how I personally felt about him.
Another question about the Heat. Are they going to be better or worse this season?
Worse. They were 48-34 last year, so I think they're going to be around 500. I think this is a team that could battle for that 8th spot, but if I had to make up my playoff, my 8 teams today, they're not going to be in it.
Yeah, same thing here. They're going to be worse. Lose a player like Dwayne Wade, the other veterans. It's not bad, the moves they made. I don't have any problem with it. They're going forward. They're trying to get young pieces, maybe get lucky with one of these talented guys in Derek Williams or Dion Waiters. And we really get to see what type of coach Spoelstra is. But I don't think they'll be able to be better with losing the players they lost.
Yeah, so we're in agreement here. I mean, this is going to be we've talked about it for a while now. The top 4 teams we believe in the East are in Cleveland, Boston, Toronto, and Indiana. After that, you can't make any guarantees. If this Heat team got hot, no pun intended, This could be a playoff team. It's not. You cannot. Hassan Whiteside's going to be big, and as we talk about guys who step up, I think I just gave away my answer there. But it's a team that's going to be a little bit worse, but I think they could sneak in. But I'd have to say, as of this point right now, they will not be a playoff team.
You mentioned it, guys who's going to step up. Who needs to step up for this Heat team?
Hassan Whiteside has to step up. Nick, he has to establish himself and not just try to worry about that 2K rating that he so deeply about and getting that rating up. This is a guy that went to Marshall and then was working out at the JCC one day and, went from the D League to this to that. So he's one of those journeyman guys that stuck and found a home. And as DJ Khaled said, my guy Whiteside, as he's always hanging out with DJ Khaled. So this is a guy that needs to become a threat, a major, major threat. And if you look at his numbers, it's not like they're overwhelming you. Offensively, he's pretty good, but he's a good rebounder. He played in 73 games last year and averaged 11 rebounds and almost 3.5 shot block. He's a big-time threat defensively. One of the better defenders I've seen in the league in a little while. He reminds me a little bit of Dwight Howard in Orlando defensively. So they have to take full advantage of him, and he's got to score a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I think he still has a lot of room to grow. You mentioned defensively as a shot blocker, he's great. He starts to pick it up as an all-around defender as the season progressed. So, the next step with him, working with a player like Chris Bosh will obviously help. And offensively, I think he has a lot of potential as a post player with his size in the paint. So Hassan Whiteside will have a really big opportunity this season to solidify himself as, one of those top 5, top 10 centers in the league if he wants to be.
My prediction, my bold prediction here is that Whiteside's going to be an all-star. I think Hassan Whiteside's going to be an all-star this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real possibility. He stays out of trouble, none of this nonsense on the court, and he produces and, he takes advantage of his opportunity with all the touches he's going to get. Could be a big year for this kid. Mm-hmm. For me, I think who needs to step up, I'm going to go with Goran Dragic. We mentioned it before. He's going to have the ball a lot more. He's going to have a lot more opportunities to make plays. There's a lot of guys in this team that we don't really know what they're doing, and a lot of guys who can't create for themselves. So having Dragic be able to set up his teammates and really work this offense, we'll see how good he really is.
Yeah, definitely. I speak very highly of Whiteside, but Dragic is another guy that if he could take his game to another level, he could be one of the better guards in the Eastern Conference. You think about Kyrie Irving, you think about Kyle Lowry, you think about Isaiah Thomas, you think about John Wall, obviously, John Wall. Now Jeff Teague's in the Eastern Conference, obviously Derrick Rose if he's healthy. So you think of Goran Dragic right now I've argued this before. He's on the outside looking in at the top 10 to me in the point guard position, maybe top 12. But he's always been a middle-of-the-road guy to making his push to be a better than average guard. If he takes that next step, him and Whiteside together can win some games for this ball club.
Yeah, that's very true. And, they'll have the opportunity this season. But yes. Final prediction for the Heat.
42-40, 41-41, right around there. 9th, 10th seed in the East. And Whiteside, an all-star. Dragic, much improved. They have some real big wins, but not enough. Not enough.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think this team maybe falls under 500. They deal with some injuries. Dragic has had injury problems in the past. Bosh, obviously. So, and I think some of these guys are a little inconsistent. I'm going to say the Heat fall out of the playoffs and they finish under 500. Not substantially, just a few games under.
And the segment that I like to do when I take a look and tell you how many nationally televised games they have, knowing that Wade left 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, so 15, which is around the average. So no LeBron. What's that?
That's a pretty good amount for them. I would think maybe less, just with the star power on the team.
Yeah, they don't have a relatively tough schedule to start. And you know how important I think it is to get off that good start. But San Antonio twice in the first 10 or 12 games isn't friendly. But, a lot of road games too. But I think this Heat team's going to be young. They're going to grow. And it's going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch them. Will you watch them on League Pass?
Probably not unless it's fantasy-wise. I might catch a few games just for Parth. But other than that, no Heat games regularly for me.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a huge fan of their style. They're going to be in some low-scoring games probably. I'll tune into some Dragic. I like his style and his game. But for the most part, I'm on board with you here. This is not a team that jumped. I mean, if Wade was there, maybe. This is not a team that really jumps off the page. In the first month of the season, they have a TNT game and an NBA TV game, so the NBA tends to agree with us. 2 nationally televised games before December 1st. So this is not a team that really a lot of people want to see.
Yeah, and talking about what people do want to see, they want to see our emoji segment. And our emoji today is the 2 shadows, the lighter one and the darker one. It's kind of like we don't know which Heat team we're going to get. A lot of inconsistency. These players have performed well in the past or they haven't. So it's going to be interesting to see how Eric Spoelstra deals with this team.
Yeah, it could be hot and cold, injury-driven and injury-prone players. So, like you said, you don't really know what to expect from this Heat team. There'll be stretches where they look like a contender. If Bosh is healthy, there'll probably be stretches where they look like one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. But you get Dragic, Bosh, and Whiteside all healthy together and mix in some of these younger guys, and they could be a top 5 team in the East, but unlikely in what we think, and that they'll probably fall out of the race.
Yeah, most likely out of the race for me. Sorry, Heat fans, but you've had plenty of success in the past. Let some of the other teams enjoy.
Let the Nick is just talking from a net fan perspective. He's still bitter about. I think what was it? The 2013 playoffs. Did they sweep you in the second round?
No, it was 5 games, but he had beat the Nets in the past as well, back in New Jersey too. So maybe I'm a little sour, but it'll be nice if they don't make the postseason again.
All right, man.
But that wraps it up for the Heat, and we're on to our next team. Thanks everybody for listening.
Guys, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Moving on to Team 19. Be sure to tune in.